Friends, we now come to a moment that I have been looking forward to. A moment when The Magic Mountain ceases to feel primarily like a novel about the relationship between two cousins, although I would maintain that it always is that, very much so at its heart, perhaps first and foremost. But here it is going to stop feeling that way, because here we first make the comparatively in-depth acquaintance of a third character. We have already met the doctors and learned something about them, and made very brief introductions to other characters, mostly in the dining halls. But here we really meet someone. Settembrini is this mysterious man's name. He is, as you can guess, an Italian, and speaks in a melodious, accentless, foreign tone with a delight in phonology and morphology that I dare say I relate to, although Settembrini surely speaks better German than I do. Settembrini, then, is someone I relate to a bit, partly because of his enjoyment of language and relationship to literature, partly because of the way he goes around talking to people about it, seeking company in shared text and shared enjoyment, or at least in shared language. Whether he is easily able to find it or not, it is perhaps sad, perhaps annoying, but, guilty as charged. One of the first moments that I knew I was in the presence of a sophisticated, interesting, and deeply irony-bearing character was at the moment when the cousins have just met Settembrini, Hans Castorp for the first time because he's new here, and Settembrini exclaims, sardonically, in the way that we will come to know so well, "Great Scott! You are not one of us! You are healthy! You are merely stopping over, as it were, like Odysseus in the realm of the shades. How bold of you to descend into the depths, where the futile dead live on without their wits." I'll never forget the first time I read that sentence, because something about it immediately grabbed me, immediately jumped out at me. And I thought, oh my God, why is this sentence so good? Why do I love this sentence so much? So I read it again. How bold of you to descend into the depths, where the futile dead live on without their wits. Well, for one thing, I realized that last clause there is an almost perfect bit of iambic pentameter. Was it, then, I wondered, something of poetic form and content in the original German? So I go, and I look it up in the original German somewhere in here. And what do I find but the following? Welche Kühnheit herab in die Tiefe zu steigen, wo Tote, nichtig und sinnlos wohnen, die Schatten gestorbener Menschen. Oh my God, that's fabulous too. Did Thomas Mann write that? I have to figure out where this came from. So I Google that. Welche Kühnheit herab in die Tiefe zu steigen, wo Tote, nichtig und sinnlos wohnen, die Schatten gestorbener Menschen. Turns out my instincts were good. Thomas Mann did not come up with those words, though he certainly employed them in a way that I find delightful. Those words, as such, are penned by one Johann Heinrich Voss, who was a poet and a translator during the 1700s. Voss had the astonishing accomplishment to boast of having translated all of the Odyssey and I believe also all of the Iliad, not just into German, but into German in verse, in meter, in Greek meter, in dactylic hexameter, the epic meter. All of the Odyssey, and I believe all of the Iliad, and probably more, all of that rendered in hexameters, like the following. Welche Kühnheit herab in die Tiefe zu steigen, wo Tote nichtig und sinnlos wohnen die Schatten gestorbener Menschen. That's epic meter, that's hexameters. What did it look like in the Greek, I wondered? I found out it would sound like this. Pos et les aidos de katethemen entatenekroi afradehes naiusi broton e dora kamonton. That's pretty good, too. That's okay. The homework, that's okay. It's okay. Just kidding. Anyway, Settembrini loves the classics. Settembrini loves the Enlightenment. Settembrini loves Italian literature. Settembrini loves German literature. Settembrini loves German music, or at least he's familiar with it. He makes a passing reference to the quote-unquote country's Germany's greatest composer. He means Mozart and his opera. He is referring to the magic flute, der Zauberflöte. And what he specifically mentions, he's making fun of Dr. Behrens here, is an aria that goes, in his translation, I am the man who catches birds, am always merry, mark my words. Why is Director Behrens always merry? Well, because he is so good at catching birds. And what is Dr. Behrens catching birds? That would be a sanatorium director catching patients. Perhaps like some we've already seen. So, Settembrini, who incidentally is certainly a better speaker of German than I am, makes this reference unclear whether the cousins at this moment know what he's talking about at all. Similarly, when he refers to Behrens and Krokowski as Rhadamanthus and Minos, two, according to Greek legend, kings of Crete, who both became feared, stern judges of the dead in the underworld. Behrens appears to be Rhadamanthus, and Krokowski Minos of the Labyrinth. Checks out. The last thing I'll say about Settembrini, lest I say too much at this early moment, is that bit where he seems to be catcalling an innocent passerby. Yeah, that did happen, and yeah, that is weird. And yeah, as someone who has professed a certain identification with this character and his quote-unquote pedagogic streak that we will learn so much more about, I admit I do find that a bit embarrassing, as Hans Castorp does. Why does the learned literary man of civilization catcall this person? We're never told explicitly, but I have a theory. More on that soon. Thanks, everyone.